Hello everyone, I'm Anas Al-Ubaidi and this is lecture 20 or session 20 within chapter 20 of the Advanced Medical Science Liaison and Medical Monitor Certification course program by CCRPS. As the chapter is about specialized monitoring techniques, while the topic of the session is about monitoring of investigator-initiated and industry-sponsored trials. Introduction. Monitoring clinical trials is a critical component of ensuring participant safety, maintaining data integrity, and adhering to regulatory compliance. The landscape of clinical trial monitoring encompasses two primary types of studies: IITS, as of investigator-initiated trials, IITS, and industry-sponsored trials, ISTS, industry-sponsored trials. So investigator-initiated trials and industry-sponsored trials. While both trial types share overarching goals, the approaches to their monitoring design and execution differ substantially due to their unique objectives, funding structures, and regulatory requirements. So, IITS for investigator-initiated trials and ISTS, which is industry-sponsored trials. Key points. We'll start with the differences in monitoring approach. So investigator-initiated trials, IITS, structure and oversight, as IITS are led by academic or independent investigators focused on answering specific clinical or scientific questions, as these trials are driven by curiosity rather than commercial goals. So curiosity rather than commercial goals. Usually. Example, a university-based study testing the potential for aspirin to reduce the incidence of colorectal cancer. Monitoring intensity. Due to limited funding, IITS, investigator-initiated trials, employ flexible risk-based monitoring strategies that prioritize critical data points. Investigators often rely on digital tools and centralized monitoring methods for efficiency, as for example, using electronic case report forms (ECRFs) for remote data validation rather than regular on-site visits. And before proceeding, as here we have a summarized diagram on choosing the appropriate trial type for research goals: investigator-initiated trials versus commercial trials. And mostly the commercial trials will be, most likely will be the industry-sponsored trials. Continuing, challenges. Resource constraints often lead to limited oversight and inconsistent monitoring strategies. Investigators may lack prior experience in running or monitoring large clinical trials, increasing the risk of non-compliance. Example of under-monitoring risk: delayed reporting of adverse events AEs due to lack of staff training in AE adverse event documentation. Regulatory context. As IITS are governed by ethical guidelines such as the International Council for Harmonization's Good Clinical Practice, ICH-GCP for short, and local IRB institution review board standards. However, the investigator-initiated trials may not require FDA or EMA, FDA in USA or EMA in EU, in European Union oversight unless an investigational product is involved. Now, industry-sponsored trials, ISTS. Structure and oversight. For ISTS, the industry-sponsored trials operate under strict sponsor-driven protocols to meet specific regulatory endpoints for product approval. The drug, biologic, or device sponsor provides funding and retains responsibility for trial oversight. Example, a multinational pharmaceutical company conducting a phase 3 trial for a new oncology treatment. Monitoring intensity, ISTS, involve comprehensive and frequent site visits, source data verification, and centralized monitoring using advanced analytics. The focus is on compliance with global regulatory requirements and rigorous data audits. Example, deploying real-time dashboards to flag missing data entries or protocol deviations quickly. Before continuing, here is a diagram summarizing the industry-sponsored trial process, as we have here. Sponsor provides funding, sponsor retains oversight, and protocols meet regulatory endpoints. Continuing. Challenges. Coordinating multi-site trials across regions with varying requirements would add complexity. High costs are incurred due to specialized personnel, technology investments, and SOP as of a standard operating procedure implementation. Regulatory context. Industry sponsored trials are subject to detailed regulations per agencies like the FDA, EMA, and PMDA, requiring adherence to 21 CFR parts, Code Federation Regulation, Federal Regulation, parts 312, 312, and 812 for investigational new products, INDs, investigational new drugs or products, and devices, IDES, investigational devices or investigational medical devices, or investigational new drugs or products, INDs. Advanced safety reporting to centralized databases is mandatory. Monitoring best practices. Best practices for investigator-initiated trials. We have RBM, risk-based monitoring, prioritize trial aspects critical to outcomes such as endpoint, data, and patient consent rather than routine checks. Example, focus on validating primary outcome measures like blood pressure reduction data in hypertension studies. Engage with ethics boards, maintain open and continuous communication with IRBs and institutional review boards to ensure ethical standards are upheld. For example, regulatory updated reports flagging deviations in patient enrollment criteria. Multidisciplinary team training. Offer training sessions for clinical teams on protocol adherence, AE tracking, and data entry procedures. As for example here, conduct workshops for nurses and lab staff to familiarize them with e-consent, electronic consent platforms. We have leveraged technology, maximizing tools, maximizing the tools to improve efficiency. Implement electronic source documentation, e-source, electronic source, as the site source might be paper source, but now sites nowadays, the majority also changing to e-source, electronic source, instead of paper source. And electronic patient reported outcomes, APRO systems. Example, using mobile apps to collect patient reported outcomes in real time. And here is a summarized diagram on monitoring best practices, validate primary outcome measures, validate patient consent, monitor adverse events, and routine data entry checks. So, continuing now with the next subject or material, best practices for industry sponsored trials. As before was monitoring best practices, this one was about IITS, investigator-initiated trials. Now, the best practices for ISTS, which is the industry sponsored trials. We'll start with centralized monitoring techniques, employ advanced algorithms and analytics to monitor trial trends, identify safety signals and ensure consistency across sites. Example, utilizing artificial intelligence AI to detect anomalies and serious adverse event SAE, reporting timeliness or timelines, reporting timelines across trial sites. Another best practice, develop detailed monitoring plans, create comprehensive trial-specific monitoring plans, for short TSMPS, that define rules, timelines, and auditing schedules. As for example, trial-specific monitoring plan, TSMP, for a cardiovascular drug outlines monthly on-site visits and biweekly source data review. Standardized or standard operating procedures, SOPs, establish uniform SOPs for global trials to streamline documentation and reporting across regions. As for example, global companies adopt multilingual e-learning, electronic learning modules to train clinical research associates, CRAs. Before continuing, here we have a summarized diagram on centralized monitoring process and trials. As here we have employ advanced algorithms, monitor trial trends, identify safety signals, and then ensure consistency across sites. Continuing with the best practices or best monitoring practices in industry-sponsored trial, rigorous data auditing, implement continuous audits, and as source data verification, SDV processes to ensure compliance, evaluate source to CRF, case report form data regularly. As for example, a CRA, a clinical research associate, performing back-to-back audits during a data lock period to identify transcription errors. Overarching regulatory considerations for IITS investigator-initiated trials, ethical guidelines as IITS follow national and international IRB/EC standards and ICHGCP principles, but with less direct regulatory oversight if no investigational product is at stake. Adverse event reporting ethical bodies are notified rather than regulatory agencies with simplified documentation requirements. ISTS, which is the industry-sponsored trial, regulatory approvals, IND, investigational new drug, or IDE device, investigational device, applications must be cleared by regulatory bodies. Trials require comprehensive compliance with FDA/EMA safety monitoring guidelines. Reporting requirements, ISTS demand advanced serious adverse event SAE, and data transparency strategies, including phase results registered in clinicaltrials.gov or EUDRACT. Practical applications and case studies. We have tailoring IIT monitoring to resource constraints. Scenario example, a 5-site trial reusing a generic drug for type 1 diabetes patients adapts risk-based monitoring RBM techniques to optimize AE, adverse event, reporting without on-site visits. We have centralized IST monitoring across global sites as IST for industry. Sponsored trial, as scenario example, a phase 3 oncology trial with 50 global sites using dashboards and machine learning to harmonize data submissions. Handling IIT investigator-initiated trial, ethical reporting deviations and spec deviations in patient recruitment cadences flagged by IRB Institutional Review Board reports, ensuring corrective actions align with local regulations. Multi-site IST, industry-sponsored trial standardization, adopt global SOPs, standard operating procedures to handle variations in minor AE documentation between European and Asian trial locations. This advanced understanding of IIT and IST, the investigator-initiated trial and industry-sponsored trial monitoring ensures that you, as an advanced physician medical monitor, or as a physician medical monitor, or as a medical monitor, or as a medical monitor, can efficiently balance regulatory compliance, participant safety, and trial integrity across varying clinical research landscapes. Summary tables, upcoming tables to summarize what we have covered through the lecture. As here, table on key differences between IITS and ISTS, the aspects we have: the oversight, funding, monitoring approach, regulatory requirements, and then primary goal. Another table on monitoring strategies in IITS and versus ISTS. As IITS again is for investigator-initiated trials, while ISTS is industry-sponsored trials. Monitoring strategies, IIT-specific approach, IST-specific approach, and then advantage. The strategies, we have the risk-based monitoring, on-site monitoring, training programs, adverse event tracking, and then centralized monitoring. A table on regulatory requirements for IITS and ISTS requirements, for each IIT adherence, IST adherence, and key example. Requirements, ethical oversight, regulatory agency approval, AE reporting standards, disclosure, and then protocol updates. Challenges and solutions in IITS and ISTS. Challenge, IIT impact, IST impact, proposed solution. Challenges, we have funding limitations, regulatory complexity, multi-site coordination, team experience, AE documentation. Table on applications of IIT and IST monitoring techniques, application area. We have technique or tool, IIT usage, IST usage, impact on trial outcomes. Application areas. We have risk-based monitoring, adverse event tracking, on-site inspections, centralized dashboards, training, and SOP oversight. Application table, scenarios. For each scenario, key principle applied, key actions, timeline, what to watch out for. Scenarios, we have IIT testing metformin for Alzheimer's, IST for cancer biology in multinational sites, IIT multi-site diabetes program, IST vaccine trial in emerging markets, IIT single center pediatric neurology study, IST for cardiovascular device development, IIT exploring generic drug repositioning, IST for antibiotic effectiveness study. Continuing with scenarios, we have IIT trial for rare diseases in rural settings, IST oncology therapy trial using AI dashboards. Then we will revise next what we have covered through this lecture through some MCQs or multiple choice questions. Question 1, what is the primary focus of monitoring in investigator-initiated trials, IITs? A, aligning with FDA and EMA investigational product mandates. B, prioritizing risk-based and resource-efficient monitoring strategies. C, conducting global standardized site training. Or D, maintaining aggressive AE logging. So, primary focus of monitoring in the IITS is on prioritizing risk-based and resource-efficient monitoring strategies. As due to limited resources, IITs often employ risk-based monitoring to focus on critical trial aspects and optimize their limited funding and personnel effectively. Question 2, which regulatory requirement is vital for ISTS industry-sponsored trial involving investigational products? A, submission to 21 CFR Part 312 compliance for IND reviews. B, minimal reporting of patient safety and ethics compliance. C, adherence to non-mandatory ICH-GCP principles only. Or D, complete exemption from AE documentation. So the most reasonable answer as B, minimal reporting does not make sense, is not applicable. Adherence to non-mandatory ICH-GCP, actually it's mandatory, so non-applicable. And complete exemption from AE, there is no such application in research involving investigational product of exemption from AE documentation, as AE has to be documented every time and always. So the only reasonable applicable answer would be A, as 21 Code Federal Regulation 21 CFR Parts 312 and 318 and 312 compliance for IND investigational new drug reviews. So A is the answer, as industry-sponsored trials must adhere to FDA regulations in USA and EMA for EMA and EU, European Union, including compliance with 21 CFR Parts 312 for investigational new drug IND applications, ensuring robust safety and efficacy reporting. Question 3, what is the key challenge specific to IITs compared to ISTs? Is it A, managing complex regional SOP disparities? B, ensuring adequate funding experienced monitoring personnel? C, handling multi-site coordination internationally? Or D, implementing centralized technology-driven monitoring dashboards? So within the 4 choices, there is one that is very much and most significant in differentiation or as a different and as a challenge that more particularly lies and located in IITs rather than in ISTs. In the investigator initiated trials rather than in the industry sponsored trials. So within the four choices, the most significant one is B, ensuring adequate funding and experienced monitoring personnel, as IITs are often limited in funding and may lack expensive monitoring expertise, which can delay trial progress and result in inconsistent data capture if not managed strategically. Question 4. Which best practice is commonly applied in ISTs in the industry-sponsored trials to enhance trial oversight? Is it A, prioritizing flexible protocols based on resource constraints? B, employing centralized monitoring with advanced data analytics? C, simplifying adverse event documentation for efficiency? Or D, limiting SOP standardization to localized regions? So, C, simplifying documentation of AE is not applicable as there is no simplification in it. AE has to be documented with every detail needed, with all the details that are needed or required, and there's no limitation in SOP standardization, as SOP has to be completely standard. And A, prioritizing flexible protocols. There is no flexible protocols in trials that are industry-sponsored trials, especially when investigational products are involved. There's no flexibility in protocol. So B would be the answer, as employing centralized monitoring with advanced data analytics. ISTs use centralized monitoring to process larger scale data trends across sites efficiently, enhancing compliance and identifying potential risks or protocol deviations in real time. Question 5. What role do IRBs or ECs, the Institution Review Board, primarily serve in investigator-initiated trials, particularly IITs? A, overseeing regulatory compliance for device-specific trials. B, ensuring ethical oversight and upholding participant safety. C, conducting detailed source data verifications as DVs. Or D, enforcing harmonized global SOPs across trial teams. So the IRB job and main role, primary and main most significant role, is the patient safety to ensuring and maintaining patient safety, participant safety. So here will be the applicable one as of B, ensuring ethical oversight and upholding participant safety. How to ensure participant safety and maintaining it? By ensuring and overseeing the ethical standards are being followed. So B is the answer. IRBs, institutional review boards, or ECs, ethics committees, oversee IITs by safeguarding participant rights, including providing ethical approvals and ensuring informed consent processes are followed. And here we come to the end of this lecture. Thank you very much and goodbye.